things up a little bit than John Fund. John is a National Review Foreign Affairs columnist and a Newsmax analyst, a good friend of the program. John, great to have you back on Newsmax TV.
Thank you, John.
All right, let's get started. I want to switch gears and focus back on this budget plan. Here is House Speaker Paul Ryan and what he had to say about this deal getting done.
To anyone who doubts my intention to solve this problem and bring up a DACA and immigration reform bill, do not. We will bring a solution to the floor, one that the president will sign. We must pass this budget agreement first, though, so that we can get on to that. So please know that we are committed to getting this done.
All right. So it appears, John, the defense hawks are going to be happy with this budget deal, but some are saying supporting the budget deal is equivalent to supporting the military. Is that an accurate statement from your standpoint?
Look, let's be very clear. This budget deal is exactly the same kind of deal that Paul Ryan voted against in 2011 before he was Speaker. If you're a fiscal conservative, it's a disaster. Yet the deal is exactly the same kind of deal that Paul Ryan voted against in 2011 before he was Speaker. If you're a fiscal conservative, it's a disaster. Yes, the military needs more money, but President Trump came into office saying he was going to reform contracting. He was going to reform the Pentagon. Precious little of that has been done so far. It would be nice if this were part of the budget deal, but it's not. As for the domestic spending side, out of control spending. The disaster relief package is so big it'll probably be a slush fund for future disasters which haven't even occurred yet. You go to the health care, no reform of the major health care programs that are going to have more money pumped into this. So, you know, it used to be said that if the Republicans had the White House and the Republicans had the Senate and the Republicans had the House, you'd at least have fiscal conservatism. That is not proved to be the case with this budget deal.
It is very frustrating for those of us who heard Republicans talking so much about fiscal restraint and, you know, watching the deficit clock get put up on the debt clock put up on the screen all the time, racking up. It's moving faster now than I think it was in the past. Here's something that Rand Paul's been talking about, and I think Rand Paul, you know, he's been very consistent on this the whole time. He penned an opinion piece titled "Congress Ignores Its Budgetary Duties Yet Again." He says that Congress really is about to vote on yet another continuing resolution. It's fourth in a row since the fiscal year started. But you can ignore the legislative speak and just remember that, quote, continuing resolution is shorthand for Congress didn't do its job. You know, 4 continuing resolutions this year, John, how many continuing resolutions have we had going back 2, 4, 6, 8 years now, it seems like? It's a lot easier for the government to have, you know, a common sense spending plan when they're doing this in long periods of time as opposed to these stopgap measures. It's just so frustrating, I think, for the average American when Congress is playing these games.
Look, Congress's job is to take some hard votes on the budget. And it's also to ride herd on the administrative state, the regulators who bedevil us. They've basically abdicated both of those roles. The regulators go make rules and they don't have to ever consult Congress. Congress rarely rolls them back. As for the budget, we don't have a budget process anymore. We have continuing resolutions, which means we spend the same amount of money, we don't reform the programs, and then we add more money on top of it whenever we feel like it and whenever the budget caps are a little uncomfortable. Congress has basically abdicated its role. It may be an interesting debating society, and it may be an interesting place to posture before the cameras, but in its fundamental 2 jobs, oversight and budget, it's basically off the playing field doing something else.
Yeah, I remember one time, John, talking to then Congressman Mick Mulvaney about the sequester, and he was saying, "Oh, the Pentagon can handle it. It's one of the fattest bureaucracies in all of Washington." But now, obviously, he's singing a different tune as the budgetary director for the Trump administration. Speaking of the president, yesterday he tweeted, quote, "The old days when good news was reported, the stock market would go up. Today, when good news is reported, the stock market goes down. Big mistake, and we have so much good, great news to talk about in the economy." Can you break down what the president's trying to say with that? Good news, bad news? What is he talking about?
Well, what the president is saying is the stock market is up, people are being hired, Wages are even going up because we have a tight labor market. All of that is good. But the market also understands the future debt issues. You mentioned the market looking forward to when there might be an economic slowdown as part of the natural business cycle. Well, at some point, we're going to start paying the piper for the debt. Think about this. All of this debt we have right now is being paid off at 1 or 2% interest rates. Very low. But that's a lot of short-term debt. What if the interest rates that you mentioned start going up 3, 4%? The enormous amount of extra money we have to spend then to pay off or to pay towards the debt will be $300, $400, $500 billion. That eventually crowds out credit and capital markets. So the markets, I think, are happy with the current state of the economy. But once again, we may be borrowing and mortgaging from the future for the short-term gain.